Welcome to Creative and Tech, a podcast show powered by ReadSpeaker AI. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts, and I'm the brand evangelist for North America at ReadSpeaker. This show is all about highlighting the brands and the organizations that are creatively using one of the largest growing spaces in technology, conversational AI. And in these next few conversations, we are chatting with people in the financial and banking sector to understand how they're using this technology to improve, innovate, and grow their customer strategy and journey. And I am so excited to welcome another great guest. I have Sunjay Pandey. He's the CEO of Woven Money, which helps you get out of debt sooner. Welcome. So excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to speak with you. What you're doing with the series here.
Yes. So I want to start off because first of all, we were introduced through Ahmed, so I want to shout out and thank him first. But you have a background of exactly what this show is about. You, first of all, were an entrepreneur for many years, and then you worked with Capital One at a VP level. So you worked in that banking and finance area, and then you also worked with Amazon launching their Alexa Skills Kit. So you understand this kind of conversational AI part. Before we get into the business you own today, can you talk a little bit about kind of those past experiences, what you learned about the banking and financial space and conversational AI space then, and where you kind of see it going now and into the future?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks to Ahmed for connecting us. Ahmed and I did meet at Amazon, which was an amazing experience for me and for all of us. But sort of the main thing that I took away from my experiences both at Amazon and at Capital One is this idea of, I wrote a piece about this some years ago called Reclaiming Your Moments. And, we all grew up with this idea of this Star Trek computer, or at least us Star Trek geeks had thought about that. And it didn't really hit home for me what the power of that might be until I became a dad. And I'll never forget this. I was in our house, and my son at the time was 5, my daughter's 2, and we had another one on the way. And I was supposed to go out and water the lawn, and I was going to take an hour. And I just wanted to hang out with the kids after, long working days at Amazon working on the skills kit. And I just thought to myself, man, I wish I could just say, Alexa, would you water the lawn? And that was like one of those moments in my life where I said, this is how technology can really change how you think about your life and reclaim moments for you, so you can do things that are more impactful and important. And so that's like sort of one aspect of computing and AI and its ability to really lift the burden of what is normal in daily life. And watering your lawn in a pandemic is a very champagne problem, and I'm talking sort of longer term. What we're looking at here is this idea of reclaiming moments that you can then invest in other things that are important to you. You combine that with banking, and when you start to think about banking, the problem sets and the opportunities are very interesting. Conversational AI and AI in general right now, large scale in banking, is about cost reduction. It's about how do we reduce the cost to handle an inbound customer claim? How do we reduce the cost to handle fraud activity? How do we reduce costs to really do what we might do in a branch or do on a phone? That's a decent start, and that's about operational efficiency. Where I think the opportunities really lie, and I think where we're going, is around helping people connect to their money in very different ways. And specifically, like really helping them imagine the life that they want and dialing into very specific segments and customer populations in order to provide value to them in automated ways. So I'll stop there and see if you have any more questions and see if we can take it in a direction that can add some value.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you kind of blending the two. And, we are definitely seeing a lot more fintech come out. We are seeing the younger generation kind of move in other directions beyond traditional types of banking. And you created this new company and this app, Woven Money. I'd love for you to share a little bit about kind of why you started this, because I know you came here as an immigrant, your family worked hard, And then you kind of looked at, the trajectory of what you've learned, and especially over the pandemic, even as well, to exemplify this, that there are a lot of people in debt. And it's a challenge to kind of figure out how to learn about money, how to take control of your finances. Can you talk a little bit about just that story and what kind of led to you saying, you know what, I think I want to do something on my own and change this space in a different way?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I am an immigrant. We came as refugees from Liberia after a civil war. We came with, I like to say, not a lot, but a lot, right? We came here with nothing, but we also came with a lot of love, a lot of education, and drive. And we were given opportunities in the United States to make something of the family, to make businesses and do well. We did that. And we were then subsequently given bad advice by financial advisors. And so the opportunity to really pay forward and take the fruits of our labor and compound them at scale has always been a real desire of mine. And I see a massive opportunity when it comes to debt. The thing is, whether you're an entrepreneur and whether you have a dollar or $500 or $1 million, money always drives scarcity and or anxiety, and it's really compounded when it's scarce, when you have debt, and it prevents you from doing your best work, and it prevents you from being your best self. The way we like to talk about it is scarcity stunts us, abundance breeds hope, hope compounds day by day, minute by minute, across generations. And that's what we're working on, is breaking that debt cycle, breaking that debt loop. And it doesn't take a lot to get to the place where you're a net saver. And once that happens, your ability to really kind of envision a prospective future and start to save and compound money for your own benefit explodes. That ability explodes. So for us, debt, and specifically high interest debt, is a really important problem to solve in order to allow hope to compound. And that's what we're focused on. And we see AI as a major part of making that happen, and automation as a layer on top of AI to make it sort of set and forget. Yes, we can address debt, and yes, it's not something that you have to worry about week by week, day by day, hour by hour. It's taken care of for you. Yes, you are a participant in that process, but it's not something you have to carry a bag on every day in order to make sure you're addressing it. And that's where we see the power of AI and the power of automation.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're right. It is, it's a problem that a lot of people face, and some people try to kind of just not even notice it or look at it. And so when you have something that can help you and automate it, it makes it a lot easier. I know part of your company also kind of has this coaching component with individuals, but do you see, or does it already, is it going to have pieces of conversational AI, especially kind of with your background? Do you see it integrating into the type of work that you're doing that will really combine, again, being able to interact with this application by speaking to it or typing to it?
I'd love to share more about that, and we're excited to share more about that in the summer. At this time, I'd love to keep that a little bit of a surprise. We're super excited about what we're up to. But suffice to say, like, if you see the trends in industry, what you're seeing is, as I mentioned before, this ability to hyper personalize experiences for specific segments and connect with them in ways that address both the financial need and the emotional need, while setting them on the path to reducing debt and saving. So we see the simplification of interacting with your money and the simplification of having very conversational interaction with your money an important part of really getting this flywheel moving on addressing specific segments and helping them make progress.
And do you see, beyond, the work that you're personally doing with your organization, because you've been, again, both in these sectors of banking, financial, and this kind of AI piece, do you see a lot of banking and financial institutions moving towards conversational AI? And in what capacity, or do you still see a lot of organizations feeling a little unsure, or just not as maybe well educated, or just not sure where to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the segments that you're talking about, right? So if you look at the top 10 banks, and then you look at community banks and credit unions, I think you're going to see a different adoption pattern across those institutions and types of institutions. What we're seeing is a predominant focus on cost reducing experiences. And we haven't yet seen the types of experiences that can really address a core job to be done. Like, and it's a very ephemeral one, right? It's very abstract, and it's really hard to dial into. And that job is something like, I want to feel better about my money, so I know that my future is taken care of. Well, that's very squishy. That's a squishy problem. And so making that less squishy is a very, very hard problem. And you're starting to see startups that are focused on very specific segments: the underbanked, teens, parents with kids who need allowances. And so, like, you're seeing this micro segmentation of customer bases. And I think that's where you're going to see the real adoption of AI and conversational AI really make hay. Now, how the larger institutions attach to that and how they really start to absorb that is going to be the question, because these are large scale institutions that serve hundreds of millions of customers nationwide. It's difficult to segment on an experience level. But I believe that the same way banks and credit card issuers and lenders segment on credit score, they're going to have to start figuring out how to segment on these very specific populations that have very specific needs based on where they are in their financial journeys. And so dialing that in is the big opportunity. What we see right now are all cost savings and operational adaptations for conversational AI and AI in general.
No, that makes sense. Do you also have you done any research or feedback when you look at kind of the newer generation, we call them Gen Z, kind of that high school, early college age, and even younger, as they're coming into play? What might their expectations be in terms of their ability to interact with their finances in some capacity?
Yeah, I mean, we're clearly seeing that having access to not just your money, but the outcomes for which you're saving that money or using that money, that needs to be at your fingertips, or it needs to be callable. You need to be able to talk to it. And that's a trend that's been taking place over the last 10 years. And I think you'll continue to see that. I mean, I think the most mundane example is, the question is, like, who wants to be on hold for 10 minutes trying to talk to your banker about something? Right? Like, whether it's an operational need, like, hey, I need to transfer money, or I want to go to Italy next year, what do I need to do? Right? Like,
Yes.
those are no one wants to be on hold for 10, 15, 20 minutes in order to do that. And they'd love to be able to interact on their terms, start a conversation, pause it, pick up, replay, rewind, and re-engage, right? So that idea of being able to pick up a conversation, stop it, and then pick it back up and continue at your leisure, that's becoming the table stakes over time. And I think that's what you'll see for everyone, not just Gen Z.
No, I agree, because like you said, we are doing different things. Sometimes we're busy. We have one question, we've got to find the answer, come back to it. So that's important. From a conversational AI standpoint, because you had worked with Amazon in the past and now you're doing some stuff on your own, what would you say makes for a great conversational AI? Whether we're talking from a chatbot standpoint, a voice skill, an IVR, whatever it is, what makes for great conversational AI that creates a wonderful customer experience and creates some sort of ROI for the brand and business as well?
Yeah, that's spot on question. That's a fantastic question. There are three things I believe that are super important. Number one is, what is the use case or the job to be done? That's super important to understand that first. And then that leads to two other points, which is, one, the design of the conversation has to be super intuitive, super simple, super easy to attach to. And then two, any other modality that needs to be added based on the use case has to be seamlessly integrated with that conversation. I'll give you an example, right? So the most, if you look at the early stages of voice with Amazon, Google, Cortana even, et cetera, what you see is a set of use cases that really only require two senses: the ability to speak and the ability to hear. So Alexa, play Radiohead. Alexa, fast forward. Alexa, rewind. Two senses get you both the input and output that you need as human and computer, right? Traffic's that way, weather's that way. There's a suite of use cases that are that way, where it's a single shot and the response back is grokkable just or understandable just by listening, right? As the use cases start to become more complex and they require more than two senses, and specifically the ability to see, then your design has to really incorporate that. And it can't be the multimodal, as it's called, experience can't be a sidecar. It really has to be an integrated experience, right? You can't just say, let's build a app that people can speak to, and then we'll give them some extra information that they can look at. Those things really have to be integrated, because that's the way we as human beings communicate in the world, right? We use, and if you just think about our computers, we use touch, we hear sometimes, we use our vision. It's a very immersive, from a sensory standpoint, set of experiences that we deal with. And I think the best experiences are really clear on the job that they're trying to solve for and the use cases that are underneath that job, and then match both the conversation, the tone, and the other modalities that need to be incorporated in order to truly drive engagement. Otherwise, what I think you have are experiences that are sort of novelties that get used for a while and then get just discarded. And so brand building in voice and AI really goes back to basics and brass tacks: is what's the job to be done, and what's the set of experiences that we combine in order to solve that job, or solve for the pains underneath that job.
No, I thank you for breaking that down. I think that was beautifully said. There's also these schools of thought where people will say, well, crawl before you can walk. Start with a very kind of basic use case and kind of build on that. And there's a lot of agencies that kind of speak to that when it comes to conversational AI. Then you have institutions that really just want to get it perfect and right, and they spend so many years in R&D and they never really launch it. Where is that balance? Do you suggest that people kind of start very small? Should they be spending, a lot more time in development? Should they be testing? What is your suggestion on that?
This is a deep question, and it's it's actually, it's an and. First of all, it's not a single. It's an and. You really have to move on all fronts. And then more succinctly, really, I think more at the heart of it is, again, what is the incentive for the customer and what is the incentive for the organization? What are we trying to drive, right? If an organization is trying to drive X metric and a customer is trying to drive Y metric, how do those two things really kind of overlap and come to fruition, right? And a customer isn't necessarily thinking I'm trying to drive Y metric, but underneath the thing that they're trying to solve for, the problem they're trying to solve for, there's a metric that can be evidenced, right? So when those two things come together, then you have the nexus for something that's actually going to get funded and might see the light of day. Everything else are science projects, right? They're just science projects that ultimately are going to gather mothballs, not to be too stark about it, but that's what's going to happen. So you got to find the metrics that work for customer and company. And then on top of that, the idea of really using startup techniques and lean startup techniques to find early adopter populations where those two metrics are going to get served, and building rapidly for those early adopter populations and letting that feed a longer term program that you're building for, a more holistic, robust view on conversational AI, that to me is the strategy for making voice and conversational AI real. And really, again, we keep saying voice, and I really do not like using that term, because I think it will continue to keep the talent and the companies doing really amazing things in this eddy of it's voice tech, it's voice tech, it's voice tech, as opposed to it's interactive technology that is really solving real needs. So all that to say, when you design programs that are both short and longer term, you need to get metrics that are solved before, and then you need to think about the technology more holistically in terms of the job that you're trying to solve for.
Well, I love that breakdown, and I love that you're saying, interactive technology, because I'm sure, as you know, there's still a lot of education that needs to be done for people to understand how voice, how conversational AI, how it all works. And that word interactive, I think, is the right one to use. When we're talking about all of this, and, you're talking about, again, getting the basics right, where does this idea of kind of fitting in things like a sonic brand or a custom voice, which is what ReadSpeaker kind of focuses on, where you kind of add these layers that really enhance the kind of brand experience, where does that fit in, and how is that important, do you think?
I think that fits in very specifically in this idea of solving for a very clean job to be done and a use case, and then distinguishing your company for its ability to solve that use case much better than any other company. A distinct voice and a distinct sonic fingerprint or voice print starts to make a lot of sense. If what you're talking about are utilitarian use cases and a utilitarian experience, then differentiation in the voice that you use and the voice that the user hears isn't as important, right? Because we're talking about, loaves of bread versus, short rib on the grill, right? I was reading a recipe last night, and I'm going to try this weekend. So that's on the mind. Yeah. So I think it's really important as you start to uniquely solve for jobs with your brand, having a unique voice that a user begins to, or a customer begins to associate with your ability to solve, becomes highly differentiating.
Yes, I, of course, agree. Again, like you said, start with those basics, have your metrics, and then you're kind of adding on to really enhance the brand. What would you say is kind of maybe one tip or one piece of advice that you would give people in the banking and financial industry when it comes to conversational AI, whether it's about how to use it, when to start, what to look for? What would kind of be one tip or advice that you'd give?
Think about, this is going to be a bit of a cheat because it's not one tip. Think about your experience as a stack, right? You need data to power the experience in very different, not very different, but across all its aspects, not only for the machine learning, but also in how you communicate to your user. So there's a data layer, there's a machine learning layer, and then there's a conversational layer. And all of those things have to be integrated well, and they all need experts in them. So think about the factoring of voice experiences as a interdisciplinary team that is laser focused on very specific jobs to be done and is connecting all the time on their specific points of expertise and how it is serving the end customer at the end of the day, and ship all the time, launch and ship all the time. It's a hard thing to do inside of large regulated enterprise, but it's achievable. We did that at Capital One, and and we found ways to do it. That was while staying within the regulatory framework we needed to stay in, and that's a really important thing. Testing your experiences with real life users all the time is a huge part of getting this right. And so structuring your team and yourselves for that, understanding the layers in the stack, and then going on a real need with metrics that are quantifiable is the tip I would give.
Well, thank you. You have brought so much value and really stated things so clearly. If people want to learn more about anything we talked about, they want to connect with you, or they want to learn more about woven money, where is the best place to do that?
You can find me on Twitter at Sunjay P, SUNJAYP, and our website is wovenmoney.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sunjay, for sharing your wisdom and insight with us. And we look forward to hearing more about how woven money grows in the future.
Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Carrie.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe to ReadSpeaker AI's YouTube page for other live videos, as well as our audio podcast, Creative and Tech, wherever you listen to podcasts.